hopefully you just keep an eye on that waiting room. I'm unmuted, right? Okay. All right then. Well, thank you so much for joining us for PAN's monthly webinar. Most of you know by now that I'm Chrissy Groenwegen and I'm the director of the Parent Action Network. And PAN's main goal is to give a voice to families and empower them to be heard among our lawmakers by telling their stories and voicing their knowledge-based opinions to advocate for healthy drug policies rooted in public health and safety. Before we begin, I'd like to make a few brief housekeeping remarks. Bronwyn will be watching the waiting room, and so if you get bumped out for any reason or have any issue joining the meeting, please email Bronwyn at bronwyn@learnaboutsam.org and she'll get you back in. Also, we ask that you please keep yourselves muted. We can, I believe we have the capability to mute you as well, but just we're watching a lot of things, so please try and take care of that yourself. Bronwyn will also be monitoring the chat for questions. We try to pack in a lot of information and to also be respectful of your time. So we ask that you put your questions in the chat, and then we do our very best to get to them at the end of the presentations. And if we miss a question or we cannot answer your question effectively, we will get back to you with a response, usually within 1 week. Also, all webinar related documents, handouts will be sent within a week as well, along with the recording of the webinar. We do try to limit our webinars to an hour, but sometimes the Q&A can run a little bit past. So if you're able to stay on, that's wonderful. And if not, again, the recording will be available. So lastly, we would like to remind you to all please sign up for our newsletter and participate in our survey if you haven't already done so. And Bronwyn will put those links in the chat at various times throughout the presentation. This month's webinar is of particular importance because, as many of you probably know, this is National Recovery Month. So we thought it was important to provide our growing network of parents, families, and professionals with information on recovery from marijuana addiction. In the wake of legalization, marijuana is still highly misunderstood, but what is proven is that marijuana use disorder, cannabis-induced psychosis, and cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, or CHS, which is the chronic vomiting syndrome, are real and do need to be recognized as treatable issues, and these conditions do require professional treatment before, during, and after recovery and treatment. Another thing we have learned is that that is perhaps one of the most important factors that can assist in treating marijuana use and other substance use disorders is that having a network of support is a vital component. And with that, I'd like to just get started, and I'd like to introduce our first guest. And our first guest is Doug Dolan. He is the co-owner and COO of Recovery in the Pines, a long-term personalized intensive substance abuse and mental health facility focused on life transformation. He currently sits on 7 committees focused on substance use and mental illness, drug overdose fatalities, suicide prevention, brain injuries, and families in crisis. He was selected as one of only 13 in Northern Arizona to receive training from the DEA and has engaged in other PR campaigns and events with them. Doug personally struggled with addiction and mental health issues. He has been sober since April 19th, 1997. He lost a younger brother to an opioid overdose and lost his best friend of 30 years to suicide. He is a married father of 3, 2 biological and 1 adopted child, and a grandfather of 3. He regularly conducts public speaking engagements on substance abuse and mental health at schools, organizations, institutions, and on other media. We are so honored to have Doug here with us tonight, and I will turn it over to you, Doug.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm immensely grateful, and I always love the opportunity to get the message out there because there's so much misinformation of what's out there. And I see it when I go and do public speaking events. I also see it from clients when they come in and they share what their perspectives are. I also am, when I speak out at schools, and I've been speaking in middle schools, because we're seeing usage as early as 10 years old. And so that's just the reality of part of what we see out there. So I want to be able to share a presentation that I have here, and I want to make sure that we can all see this here. Let me pop this up. Excellent. You can see that? Okay, great. Excellent. So, this is really kind of a bulleted snapshot of the bioinformation that you already gave me. And the reason why I share this information is I have my perspective from a number of different angles. So as mentioned, I've gone through this myself. I started smoking marijuana back in 1985, and I smoked it until the early 90s, as well as I was a blackout binge drinker and got involved in other substances, but it was predominantly alcohol and marijuana were my two substances of choice. And so I've been through it myself. And yet the marijuana from back in the mid 80s to the early 90s is very different than the marijuana and the various THC products that are out there today. And so that's part of the issue that I'm seeing, because a lot of the clients that I have, especially if they're of a younger generation, will have heard from their parents or somebody else that's older saying it's not that big of a deal. And yet what they're really doing is kind of comparing apples and oranges. Like, it's just not even the same thing. And so some of it is from my own personal journey, and also from these various committees that I sit on. So on these committees, I'm sitting with a wide variety of different professionals who are the heads of law enforcement. There's been DEA officials there. There have been our county attorney, other court executives. There are other mental health and medical professionals on there. So I'm getting a very well-rounded understanding of not only what I'm seeing, both through my own journey and what I do at Recovery in the Pines, and I'm very active with our clients here. It's also from all these various different sources. So some are from Families in Crisis that I sit on a committee for with our local hospital. Some of that has been from the DEA. Some of that has been from this coalition that's taking a look at brain injuries and how does brain injuries potentially make somebody more susceptible to a substance use disorder, or how does it work in the reverse of that? How does an extensive chronic substance use disorder potentially lead to brain injuries? And so my perspective, I feel, is different than what you would see from most treatment center owners, in essence. And so I feel very fortunate to be able to give back, to sit on these committees. I love the education that I get and the ability to go share that information with the public. Let's take a look at a couple of the myths that I regularly hear from people. The first one is cannabis is harmless. And there again, I'm typically hearing that from individuals who are listening to an older population, or potentially even an older population. Here's one of the things that we need to be aware of. So I do sit on a committee to review all the overdose fatalities for our county. I take a look at the toxicology reports with the medical examiner and some other professionals. We also go out and do family interviews to see what were other mitigating factors, what are some things of family history. And so I've reviewed cases where marijuana is quite often part of the toxicology report. And in one particular case that I'm thinking of was the only thing on their toxicology report. And so when people say marijuana is, or cannabis is harmless, they don't know what they're talking about. I see quite the opposite. I have clients in my program who are solely here for a marijuana use disorder and not polysubstance, other substances. No one dies from a cannabis overdose. Again, I know that not to be true. I've seen it firsthand in the toxicology reports of what I reviewed. And separate from that, although it's rarer than obviously what we're seeing from the wave of fentanyl that's coming into the United States, which, by the way, we also see mingled with THC products. So that's another factor of what we need to take into consideration. But if they don't overdose and die from marijuana usage, how many are getting into auto accidents that they perish from? How many are having issues of psychoses that end up committing suicide? There's other compounding factors that we need to take into consideration. Cannabis is non-addictive. Again, I know that not to be true. I have clients in the program who, again, their only substance use of choice is marijuana, and they've gone to extensive lengths to continue to use at high risk to their freedom, to their finances, to their relationships, and potentially even to their lives. And so I've seen that to be true. Cannabis doesn't have withdrawal syndrome or symptoms. Again, we've had to help people detox off of that. And so some of what we've seen from that, issues of psychoses, issues of irritability, issues of nausea and other, GI distress, sweating. So there's a number of different factors, again, depending upon how heavy the usage is and some other factors, but it definitely can have withdrawal symptoms. And then cannabis can treat other addictions. Now, there's a lot of other centers that may argue with me on that one, because some centers will use it as a way to assist with like an opioid withdrawal or something of that nature. And so what we look at Recovery in the Pines is, if you look at, let's say, marijuana is not as harmful as opioid, it's like, but is it the best thing to use as a way to help people with those other addictions? So I've had clients come to my program that one of their first question is, when can I get my medicinal marijuana card? Because that's what they've already been used to in a number of other programs, and say, hey, it's not that big of a deal. It's safer. It's better that I use marijuana than I use these other substances. And it's like, yeah, but there's other factors, which we're going to get into in the presentation, that you're putting yourself at risk for so many other things. Why would you even go there? So in our particular case, we do not allow clients to be on medicinal marijuana while in our program. I don't want to treat one addiction with potentially another addiction and other factors. Here are some of the influencing factors that we need to take into consideration, because it's not only the substance that we have to take a look at. And it's not that I want to overcomplicate situations, but we as individuals, we can be some complex cases. There's those things in our nature and there's those things in our nurture. In that nature category, if we've seen clients who have come through a complicated childbirth per se, they can have certain processing disorders or other issues. Are they somebody who's coming from an addicted parent, which happens to be true in my case with my adopted child, that taking a look at issues of fetal alcohol syndrome or other issues of dependency? Were there other factors of prenatal stress that studies have shown the impacts that can have on an individual? Where's their IQ? Where do they score on their Big Five personality type, which that acronym OCEAN stands for openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And so in that factor, I'll use in my particular case, I also happen to come from a big family. I'm third of 7 kids. And so my mom would often ask, what did we do wrong? Because I thought we raised you the same way that we raised your other siblings. And so in my family, you have one that used marijuana extensively for that period from 85 to the early 90s, and was also a blackout binge drinker that I took later into 1997 until I made a decision to get sober. And so my parents were assuming we raised you the same way, you would perceive these events the same way, you would take on the parenting the same way. Well, when it comes to things even as basic as the Big Five, if those scales are different, we're going to just perceive the world in a very different way. Then there's issues of processing disorders, hormones, that pleasure-pain principle. These are all factors of, hey, why does somebody potentially get addicted where somebody else doesn't? How are they using it as a coping mechanism where it's not necessary for somebody else? And then there's those things in our nurture. How were we raised? So when you combine things of our attachment style, and there's 4 primary types of attachment style: a secure, an anxious, an avoidant, and a disorganized. That also has complicating factors for an individual. Do they have anything of adverse childhood experiences, which is a score from 0 to 10 on some, common types of trauma that an individual can experience in the first 18 years in that family of origin? And in some cases, it also may be from an orphanage, or it may be from the foster care system, because we have a number of clients that have come through our program that are adopted. I just spoke at a trauma conference out in Indiana, not last weekend, but just the weekend before, solely focused on those who have come out of orphanages and in foster care and going through the adoption process. So these are all things that are going to impact an individual. Then there can be other forms of trauma or PTSD. You have the social influences of either the peer group and also that family home setting. In some cases, we've seen that it's the parents who got the children started on the drugs and who are still heavily influencing them to stay on the drugs. And so those are issues. Epigenetics, how are those environmental factors, making changes in our gene makeup? Is there substance use and or abuse? Do they have any structure or discipline or routine in their upbringing? Some do, many don't. And have they ever identified some kind of life purpose? Because without having some form of purpose, we've seen is how many just kind of wander through life, going back to that pleasure pain principle. Hey, how do I seek out the quickest pleasure and how do I avoid pain? Because otherwise life really doesn't have much meaning to it. And so I'm just kind of wandering lost through that. So these are all factors to take into consideration in addition to a marijuana use disorder. Then, unfortunately, it can be complicated even further because we have 3 predominant strains of types of cannabis. And so you have the sativa, the indica, and the ruderalis. And they're usually focused on differentiation in the level of THC to CBD in those products. That's particularly what they focus on. And they each have what they're claimed to be able to help. So for instance, on the sativa, hey, maybe somebody's using that to fight depression or increase an appetite. And yet there's the risk of the side effects of, well, it can cause paranoia, irregular heart rate, and other negative effects. So it's usually one that's more energizing of an individual, where the indica is one that more sedates the individual, that they may make claims it can help with insomnia and with chronic pain, but there's also issues potentially of lethargy, decrease in motivation, and depressive symptoms. And then you have the ruderalis, which is more so people will look as a strain for medicinal purposes. One of the issues that we have there, similar to what we've had with the opioid crisis, is if it was originally intended for a particular use, suddenly it was spread across and it seems to be named the magic drug for all things. And it was never intended for that. And yes, that's how it's promoted. When we also have the social factors of how much we've destigmatized in essence, but really we've done a disservice in how loosely we make marijuana okay to go ahead and use. There's a lot of medical professionals that do that too. I know of specific cases, a family member who went in because of having an infection, and what they were pushing was a medicinal marijuana card. Now, this particular individual, by the way, is a medical professional. And she was telling them, I know you can't cure an infection with medicinal marijuana. Like, there's no basis for that. She ended up firing that particular medical clinic and going to another one because she's like, stop pushing the medicinal marijuana on me. And they would not stop pushing it. Then what you also look at is there's various types, type 1, type 2, type 3, that change high THC rate to high CBD rate. And what, if people are honest, if they look at the studies that are out there, what they will tell you is it's likely that this is what sativa or indica or ruderalis will do for you. But they will also say, we really don't know. There's no guarantee. Because just like with let's say pain medications and also psych medications, as many of you may already know, not all of our bodies process those things in the same way. And so from that standpoint, it's very easy that we also don't know from these different strain types. Then these are also evolutionary paths that we need to take into consideration as somebody going down a compulsive path, that as they get triggered or activated, they go to a numbing or arousal agent as a way to distract themselves from whatever that thing is. And all they're doing is setting up consequences for themselves, and they're stagnant in their own personal growth, and they just put themselves back to the top of the list again. And we have to watch, as we stay on this compulsive path, we're also hyperwiring the neural pathways and the dopamine production to unfortunately incentivize us or make us hyper efficient at these unhealthy compulsive behaviors versus going down this healthy, curious path. When I have these triggers or pain, do I seek out a healthy solution that I can put into action to have the rewards of a transformation? And so we have to take those things into consideration. Also, these confusing signs of marijuana use disorder versus mental illness. I'm not going to read through all of these because of time's sake. You can see these, but just looking at these, when you're working with somebody on a short-term basis, well, are you dealing with a mental health issue, or are you dealing with marijuana use disorder? You don't know without time. And so many of these can be an either or scenario. So here's why most treatment programs fail that I see. And again, I've worked extensively in this field and also on these committees to see a number of these programs. So most are short term. They're in the 30 or 60-day range, some 90-day range. But even sorting out that previous list that I showed you of those things of a marijuana use disorder versus a mental illness, you typically don't even see or are able to differentiate those two things during that period of time frame. You might have just scratched the surface on some other issues of what they're dealing in their nature or in their nurture, trauma, things of that nature. It's not enough time. You might get somebody to be able to stop something. You haven't had the time to teach them how to live life a new way. Some are just plain wrong fit, unfortunately. If you have money, if you have an insurance policy, there are a lot of programs that will say, yes, we will take you. And they really don't have the skill set to be able to work with the client. They're really just filling heads in beds. And so you want to be careful of that. Misdiagnosed or over-medicated, some of that, again, is for that short-term treatment reason that diagnoses are given, some to be able to bill, some to be able to medicate, some to be able to determine a treatment plan, but you need time to see, hey, some of those diagnoses may change over time. Maybe this is how you were presenting, but we didn't have the proper diagnoses for you. Many programs are also cookie cutter. They're really structured as a one size fits all to be able to bill. And so there's not a whole lot of individualization for the client. That's where it gets into the minimum focus for the maximum dollar goal. Many are a fee for service, which means they'll have a listing from an insurance company that'll tell them, hey, here's all the potential services of what you could apply to that client. And many will force all of them on the client so they can maximize their billables. And it may not even be something appropriate or necessary for the client. Then they lack holistic care. Most programs don't look at clients multidimensionally. We look at them mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, socially. We look at them from a number of factors. A lot of programs, partially because they're short-term, they can't get into all those things. So they're just focusing on a subset. They also tend to be poorly staffed. So they're failing in, they're having either underqualified or understaffed working with your family member. They lack that family engagement and the education. It isn't just about send away my loved one, I hope they get well and we'll all be a happy family. Like, there are other dynamics. We may have changed as family members and how we engage them, and we need some help. We need some insight. And so a lot of programs fail in that capacity. They also set unrealistic and unhealthy transitions. If you take somebody from a short term where you are supervising everything and managing everything in their day, let's say in a 30-day program, and you suddenly release them out to manage their own life, That's such a stark transition that most aren't going to know how to handle that scenario, especially as they're coming back to complex situations with family, with work, and things of that nature. I've seen the discharge plans from other programs, and it's embarrassing. It can be a one page. If you're in a moment of crisis, call 911. It's like, thanks, but what beyond that? There's so many other factors to take into consideration. And a number of programs, if they're really honest, they may say they'll treat marijuana use disorder, but having conversations with them behind the scenes, they think it's no big deal. We shouldn't be worried about this. So you really need to dig in and ask places questions about that. So what's the solution? Is to look at, here are key elements for quality of care. And so there's a number of things from the screening process to not believing that, hey, marijuana is the best solution for harm reduction. There is healthier ways to treat an individual. Places that believe in long-term care, most of my clients I'm engaged with for 1 year, because you need to get through so much, not only to go through all the factors that led up to this, teach them a new way to live, watch them implement it over an extended period of time while they're going back to work or back to school or working through other family goals, and walking through that process with them. There's other individualized solutions that it's not just a one size fits all. You're looking at all these life goals, you're treating them multidimensionally, you're coordinating other outside services, and that's necessary because let's say somebody has some other kind of ailment that needs an outside medical professional. You don't just release them to go take care of it on their own. If we've ever had somebody that's need to go to the emergency room, we show up with the individual, we make them aware that they're in a program, we share with them their medication list, whereas a lot of other programs will just drop them off and hope that the individual returns. That's a big gap for a lot of people to either relapse or go drug seeking in other ways. That they actually provide the marijuana use disorder and the mental health care, that they have an appropriate team, and that they will offer to you, not like not things that you can read up on a website as far as testimonials, but you can talk to real people who have experienced the program that can share that with you. So I know I had to throw kind of a lot in there. I'm sorry if I've gone a little bit over time. Very passionate about this, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share.
Thank you so much, Doug. So, as Doug was speaking, it occurred to me that like Doug is representing a treatment facility, right? So while we can treat marijuana use and substance use disorder, we all know that there are in-between periods where sometimes you can't find the proper place, or someone might not be ready for treatment. And that's where peer recovery coaches come in, because they can bridge that gap and be a support system when in the midst of the struggle, help you find resources. And so that's why it's so important to have this community of peer recovery advocates, coaches, and specialists. So with that, I would like to introduce Christina Gobel. Christina is a dear personal friend of mine and one of the most humble peer recovery supervisors and advocates I have ever known. She was recently promoted to be assistant director to the Council on Addiction Prevention and Education in Dutchess County, which is where I worked prior to my tenure here at PAN. And she is still the supervisor of the recovery services and the coordinator of the victim impact panel, also at the council, which is CAPE for short. As a supervisor and recovery coach, she serves as a personal mentor for people seeking recovery and family members impacted by a loved one's substance use disorder. She uses evidence-based practice and person-centered support to assist individuals on their unique pathway to recovery. She also assists individuals in overcoming barriers and obstacles to recovery and helps them find a pathway that works best for them. Christina provides educational trainings throughout the community as well. She has a bachelor degree in science of a bachelor of science, I'm sorry, in professional studies, and she also has the veteran supported recovery certification. And she was recently awarded the Dutchess County 2023 Community Partnership Award for all the work she does in the county. That is probably one of the most prestigious awards in our county, and I'm so proud of her for that. She is a proud family member, friend, and ally of people in recovery. She is a certified peer advocate, which is a CERPA, a certified addiction recovery coach, which is CARC, and a credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor, which is the CASAC. She has taken dozens of additional trainings and to enrich her own personal knowledge and skill set. She is also, she volunteers on the board of Friends of Recovery Dutchess, another resource that we have listed in our documentation for you after the presentations. And Friends of Recovery Dutchess helps connect people to the support and resources they need to recover from addiction. She believes that through holistic healing, education, and unconditional support, wellness is possible for anyone who wants it. And lastly, I do want to mention that she also is part of the Dutchess County Suicide and Overdose Fatality Review Board. And with that, I turn it over to Christina.
Thank you so much, Chrissy, for that. I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here this evening. Thank you all for having me. So as Chrissy said, I'm Christina Goebel, and I am the Assistant Director at the Council on Addiction Prevention and Education of Dutchess, or CAPE for short. CAPE was the first organization in Dutchess County to have a peer grant, so that was definitely an exciting thing for us. For the past 3 years, I've run the Recovery Services Program, and I've supervised the peer advocates that we've had on board. I am an advocate, an ally, and a family member. Peer advocates and recovery coaches are individuals with lived experience related to alcohol and substance use disorder. Our role is to complement but not duplicate or replace the roles of therapists, case managers, and other treatment team members. We help to engage, educate, link, encourage, motivate, and support individuals on their chosen pathway to recovery. Recovery is a unique journey and not always a linear pathway. We teach at CAPE about multiple pathways to recovery. Some of those multiple pathways can include yoga, Tai Chi, NA, AA, refuge recovery, celebrate recovery, just to name a few. There's also supported recovery, which was formerly known as MAT. And this is also available for individuals who are ready to seek a harm reduction pathway. The truth is that there's no correct way to recover from a substance use disorder. Substance use and alcohol use disorder is a complex brain disease and not a moral failing. It changes the brain's chemistry, but the brain can heal. It's important to reduce the stigma associated with substance use. It needs to be a community effort where we use kindness and empathy for all of those who suffer from this disease. Change talk is something that needs to become part of our common language. For example, phrases such as an individual who is in sustained recovery, as opposed to saying that an individual is clean, which stigmatizes that the person was dirty at one point in their life. Just one example. I am part of the community organization Friends of Recovery, as Chrissy mentioned. It is a sister organization for Friends of Recovery New York. We help to connect people to support and resources to recover in a supportive, non-judgmental environment. And I work with many holistic approaches to assist individuals that I serve, because wellness and recovery is possible for anyone who wants it. For more resources about Dutchess County, you can visit us at capedc.org.
Thank you so much, Christina. And again, I hope that you can stay for the end in case we have any questions about the services in New York.
Absolutely. Sure.
Obviously, this is a national organization, so and a national webinar, so it's people from all over, but I think it's just important to have the available resources. So thank you. Next, I'm going to introduce Aubrey Adams and Bart Bright. Another phase of the recovery process is having peer recoveries advocates who work with and support families suffering from addictions, and also from the having family members who are suffering from addictions and affecting the whole family. So Aubrey Adams is the director of Every Brain Matters and is a former Colorado mom who, after experiencing the devastating consequences of today's industrialized marijuana, found recovery for herself and her two sons in Houston, Texas. Aubrey graduated from this parent-driven, enthusiastic recovery community and served as a host mom for youth in recovery for over 4 years. She developed Every Brain Matters to bring hope and solutions to other families. EBM provides family recovery resources and support meetings, including Maranon meetings, which she helped create, a 12-step program that gives support and hope to families affected by another person's marijuana use. She hosts a podcast called It's Just Pot, What's the Problem?, where she openly discusses the public health crisis caused by the marijuana expansion. Aubrey was honored to receive Drug Free America Foundation's 2021 Moxie Award. Her op-ed was published in USA Today, and she is a family support consultant working on a national certification as a family peer specialist. And Bart Wright enjoys being a camp counselor, day camp director, and teacher, earning his bachelor's degree in recreation from San Francisco State and his teaching credentials from Chapman University. He retired in 2019, and he lives in Northern California with his wife, Hazel. Bart is a volunteer with Maranon family groups. Bart used to think marijuana was harmless. In my 20s, when I used to smoke pot, I said stuff like, it's just pot, it's no big deal. But I was wrong. It is a very big deal. And for his son, and it was for his son, Kevin. My wife and I witnessed our son experience many episodes of cannabis-induced psychosis, a diagnosis currently placed in the DSM-5. He died by suicide in 2018 at 29 years old. One of the last statements he made to Bart was, "Cannabis has ruined my life." Bart is honoring his son by helping others through this process. Thank you. So Aubrey and Bart, please take it away. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Chrissy. Can you guys hear me and see my slide? Yes, okay. All right. I always get the wrong slide up where I get my notes up and not the slides up. So technology is definitely a challenge for me. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. You know, like Chrissy said, I am director of Every Brain Matters. I'm a former Colorado mom and a former host mom for youth in recovery. And I am one of the founding members of Maranon and a family support consultant. You know, I know what it's like to have a child addicted to marijuana or having psychotic episodes from marijuana. I know what it's like to have a husband depressed, suicidal, and hearing voices from marijuana. And I know what it's like to drive a child to treatment, leave them there, and drive away. And I know what it's like to see a child recover health for over 3 years of sobriety and then relapse. I know what it's like not to see him for 2 years during that relapse period. And I know what it's like to see your child very sick. My son called and asked for help last December. When I picked him up, he was skin and bones. He couldn't eat. He had severe abdominal pain, and he was only testing positive for THC. So as you can imagine, this has been a painful journey, and I know that I'm not alone. So I and other families that have been harmed or have loved ones who have died from the effects of marijuana developed Every Brain Matters, a community to educate, support, and take action for families. So how do families recover from this era of industrialized THC or marijuana? First, we need to be educated to learn about today's industrialized marijuana, and the products are purposely deceptive to look like normal foods. They have high levels of THC to be more addictive, and now they are much more accessible. The addiction for profit industry is putting marijuana in everything, which makes our jobs as parents so much harder. They put THC in flavored water, THC sugar or powder that you can put in coffee and teas. They have THC pills. These are promised to make your sex life improved. Here's the THC pills. And these pictures come from a website called thcphotos.com, and it's formed by an organization called One Chance to Grow Up, which is located in Colorado. They have THC toothpicks, THC inhalers, THC peanut butter cookies, and sleek, sexy vapes with THC. They have birthday cake flavoring THC vapes, and they have vapes that look like crayons with THC. And they have the crack of marijuana, 99.9% THC. Kind of looks like crack cocaine. And they have the other high concentrated products like the shatter, the crumble, and the butter and wax, the dabs. They have THC, Delta 8 THC, which has been legalized through our federal government through the 2018 Farm Bill. And of course, the candies. And parents need to be educated on the effects of marijuana. So we provide science-based and all-in-one resource that lists the short-term and the long-term effects of THC. You know, young people are constantly being exposed to misinformation about the effects of marijuana, and we can change that by displaying this poster in environments where youth hang out. The QR code on the poster provides supporting resources with live links. We also have pamphlets that give simple explanations to learn about what is cannabis use disorder or addiction for marijuana. We can learn about cannabis-induced psychosis, or when a person experiences a break from reality, and some of those symptoms are paranoia, delusions, or hallucinations. We can learn about cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. This is when marijuana levels become toxic in the body, and the person suffers from severe abdominal pain and vomiting, which can lead to organ failure. And we also have pamphlets that explain the connections between marijuana and suicide and opioid use disorder. And our latest pamphlet describes the THC hemp products like the Delta 8s that I mentioned before that were legalized through the 2018 Farm Bill. So please utilize our educational resources at schools, hospitals, or anywhere that would benefit from them. And here's an important educational resource developed by Dr. Crystal Collier that describes the level of use, which are experimentation, misuse, abuse, and dependence, which means the disease of addiction is present and structural changes have occurred in the brain. This is where we see more intense behaviors, craving, and unsuccessful attempts to stop or cut down. Think of these steps as like stages of cancer. If cancer is diagnosed in stage 1 or 2, treatment and outcomes are better. If cancer is diagnosed in stages 3 or 4, treatment becomes more intense and the chances of survival lessen. So this is why parents must respond to a child's marijuana use as soon as possible and not ignore it. And at Every Brain Matters, we provide a variety of family support resources for recovery. We have treatment resources, a private Facebook group to ask questions and find connections. We have articles and videos that answer the questions families may have going through the recovery process. And we provide support meetings specifically for families recovering from cannabis use disorder, cannabis-induced psychosis, and cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. And here are a few examples of the videos we provide. You can find these videos on the Every Brain Matters YouTube channel. This is Christy. You can hear how she describes how she recovered and responded to her son's 2 episodes of CIP, or cannabis-induced psychosis. And this is her son, Zach. You can hear him describe his addiction to dab pens and the cannabis psychosis that he experienced, and how he recovered and became a leader and a mentor to other youth in recovery. And Zach was actually one of my host kids. Then we have Linda and Colby describe how Colby survived 3 episodes of CIP, or cannabis-induced psychosis, and now he's working towards becoming a mental health nurse. And then we have Lauren, whose drug of choice was heroin, and she tried to use marijuana as a harm reduction drug, but it caused psychosis and always led her back to heroin. You know, once families are educated and found support, they need to take action. So step one that I recommend families do is to put your oxygen mask on first before assisting a child, just like if we were on a plane. We need to make sure that we are breathing easily and consistently, which allows us to be more helpful to them. And all this really means is that we are making sure that we are taking good care of ourselves. And two, when responding to a child's behavior of using marijuana, we need to try not to react out of fear, which is so much easier said than done. And that's why we go to support meetings. Our responses need to be action-based with positive, concerning messages. Then three, also, we need to seek professional help with someone who understands neurodevelopment, the stages of change, and does not minimize marijuana's impacts on your child's health. Then, depending on the severity of use and the recommendation by the professional you're working with, finding a program or support community is a good step in the right direction. I recommend a program with parental involvement, fun activities, and accountability, because you don't want to do this alone. You know, families working together with professionals in community is powerful and can be life-saving. When we work together, we find our strength, connection, and tools we need to make the best decisions for our families. In community, we learn what we can control and what we can't control. In community, we learn how to establish loving, healthy boundaries that we can actually hold to raise our child's floor or their bottom. You see, we don't want them to hit rock bottom. And in community, we learn acceptance of ourselves and our children and work from there. And in community, we also get clearer about what our role is as a parent. The Every Brain Matters community provides support meetings so families can be active in the recovery process. Our speakers meeting is the first Friday of every month, where we learn about a person's experience, strength, and hope as they recover from the effects of marijuana. And then the audience can ask questions at the end of the meeting. And our Climbers meeting is an educational interactive meeting that meets every Wednesday and is led by a professional, where we learn the tools of recovery and talk about the 4C. You know, in 12-step programs, we learn about the 3 C's. We didn't cause it, we can't control it, and we can't cure it. But the 4th C is that we can contribute to it positively or negatively. And that's why these support groups are so very helpful, because those lines can be blurred in the eyes of a parent. So by talking this out, families become more empowered to make the best decision for their families. And I want to give you an example of what we learn in the Climbers meeting. We talk about how we can implement a consequence in a clear, kind, quick way. So our motto is be clear, be kind, be gone. So for example, if your teen has broken the rules of your home and was caught using marijuana, then the consequence could look something like this. You would say to your teen, it's an established rule in our home that there is no drug use, and we are concerned why you would harm yourself by using marijuana. We're going to manage your phone from now on until we are sure you're taking really good care of yourself and not using marijuana anymore. And we have made an appointment with a counselor to see what kind of support we all need to get, and then exit the room. It's important at this point that we don't engage with any arguments or negotiations, because we always want to give the benefit of the doubt to our kids. So in conclusion, we all want to know, what is the formula to increase the chance of long-term recovery? Well, 1 is healthy, sober peers. 2 is healthy family dynamics. And 3 is a healthy community. And before I turn this over to Bart to share with you about the Marathon program, I want to end with just a few more tips. There are different pathways to recovery solutions. Please know that the program doesn't work for you, you work the program. And showing up is most of the battle, so just keep showing up. Always take what you like, leave the rest, and don't get caught up in analyzing too many details. There is something to learn in every meeting, from every program, and from every professional and family member you meet. And it's very, very important that we must remember that we are capable of families, and so are our children. And if you'd like to learn more about parenting a child that's using marijuana, I give a longer presentation with valuable tools and resources for families. So please contact me if I can be of service to your community. And thank you very much. And I'll turn this over to Bart.
Thank you, Aubrey. I'm really glad to be here. I'll give you a brief, everyone a brief overview of Maranon. So yeah, basically it's a 12-step program designed specifically for those who are affected by another's marijuana use. Next slide, please. So dealing with someone's addiction can be a painful struggle, but it can also create opportunity. While we have found that we cannot change others, we can transform ourselves and create more serenity, clarity, and happiness in our lives. Next. We have a mom's fellowship group that meets the first Wednesday of every month on Zoom. And every year, actually for the last 2 years, we have had a convention or like a mini retreat. We do that in conjunction with Marijuana Anonymous. This, of course, is the group that is for people who are trying to stop marijuana. And then we are the group that is the family members of people that are either trying to stop or that are not stopping, they're continuing to use. Next, please. We have 9 weekly meetings, 8 on Zoom and 1 in person every week. And what I hear many times from newcomers is when they come onto our meeting for the first time, they say stuff like, finally, I found a group of people who are supportive and understand my situation and that don't say, oh, it's just pot, it's not a big deal. So we provide a lot of support, and to save time, you can just look at the slide. We have different meetings, but we have quite a few meetings. So next slide. Pamphlets. One is Maranon. What is Maranon? So if you go to our website, you will to read that. And then what is sponsorship? And that's a part of every 12-step program. Next. So what I'd like to do is read one of the letters. We have 2 letters on our website. So if you go to maranon.com, MAR-ANON.com, you'll find all this information. The first letter is from someone who suffers from cannabis use disorder. That's the smaller letter that you see there. And what I'd like to do is read the other letter from someone who has cannabis-induced psychosis. So I have cannabis-induced psychosis. I need your help. Marijuana caused me to experience a break from reality. The delusions and hallucinations I'm experiencing seem real to me. Please don't tell me otherwise or say that I'm crazy. Don't blame, shame, scold me, or let me provoke your anger. Arguing with me may push me away. When I'm experiencing a mental health crisis, don't excuse any negative behaviors. Please maintain healthy boundaries with me. Accountability allows me to recover. Call for help if I try dangerous things or if I'm a threat to myself or others, even when you think I'm bluffing. Lock up any weapons in the house. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. Please don't make me responsible for your fears. Seek support for yourself. I know it's not easy. You knew me before this happened. Have hope and know that I'm in there somewhere. Do learn all you can about marijuana and marijuana psychosis. Attend Maranon meetings and go to open Marijuana Anonymous meetings. They're the people who can help you see the situation clearly. I love you, your loved one with CIP. So again, please check us out and on our website, and thanks for letting me share. Take care.
Thank you so much, Aubrey and Bart. Very, very valuable information. Wonderful job. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to introduce 2 very important people in this process, Alara Bedka and Jordan Davidson. Alara Bedka currently works as a marketing and IT administrator for the Council on Addiction Prevention and Education in Dutchess County, New York. She is an individual in recovery from marijuana use disorder. Alara started her pathway to recovery through mutual aid programs in 2016. After being hired at CAPE in 2018, her eyes were opened to the multiple pathways of recovery and the importance of prevention work and education in the community. Her success in recovery has afforded her the opportunity to share her personal story with others and be a power of example. She also has experience as a family member and friend of someone struggling with substance use or alcohol use disorder. As a result, she has a well-rounded perspective of this family disease and the serious impact that marijuana use can have on individuals, families, and the community. Alara is an advocate in the recovery community and volunteers on the board of a local nonprofit, Friends of Recovery Dutchess, helping to connect people to the support and resources they need to recover from SUD addiction. She is grateful for the many gifts that recovery and advocacy have brought into her life. Alara is also a personal friend of mine and like a daughter to me, and I am so proud of her path. Jordan Davidson, who I have not known quite as long, but I'm also extremely proud of him, serves as Sam's Communications and Legislative Affairs Officer. When he was 17 years old, Jordan entered long-term addiction recovery after struggling with cannabis use disorder. Prior to joining Sam, he worked in Connecticut politics at the state and federal level. At SAM, Jordan is a principal legislative staffer managing federal policy on Capitol Hill. He helped shepherd the passage of the Medical Marijuana and Cannabidiol Research Expansion Act, the first ever marijuana reform bill signed into law. He has also led the successful efforts to defeat congressional passage of the MORE, States Reform, Cannabis Administration and Opportunity, and Safe Banking Acts. Since he joined SAM in 2019, Jordan has specialized in youth outreach and substance abuse prevention. He has been invited as a guest speaker by organizations and members of Congress across the country. He has a degree in political science from American University in Washington, D.C. With that, I would like to turn it over to Alara and Jordan as they tell us all a little bit more about how the recovery community has aided in their path to recovery from the disease of marijuana disorder.
Do you want me to get started, Chrissy? Oh, there we go.
So yes, the two of you, please, thank you again for being here. Again, I am extremely proud of these two incredible young people who are in recovery from marijuana use disorder and really rocking it on every level possible. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm so excited to hear this part of the presentation.
Yeah, Laura, you're welcome to go first.
Okay.
Sure,
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction, Chrissy, and for asking me to speak tonight. I really, I'm honored. And yeah, I mean, it was really great to hear some of the other speakers, Doug in particular, breaking down all the different pieces of identifying this problem and contributing factors was like, yep, yep. You know, one thing I like to share when I tell my story is just, I was the good kid in my house. As far as the world and the adults in my life were concerned, they thought I was fine. I didn't present any outward symptoms. I was the overachiever. I was in honor societies. I was getting perfect grades. I was in music and sports and yada, yada, yada. You know, I was showing up for life and I looked like I was okay, but I absolutely was not. And a lot of the emotional turmoil that I dealt with, a lot of trauma that I experienced growing up in my house, that stuff, it compounded and I internalized it. I didn't have tools. I didn't have healthy tools. Let me specify. I did not have healthy tools to cope. And eventually it got bad enough inside for me to say, okay, I'm going to try something. And my sister, on the other hand, was the kid in the house who did present symptoms. Her progression was a little bit faster than mine, and she was skipping class and getting in trouble and doing things like that. And you know, she was a big user of marijuana, and eventually, you know, I tried that, and I didn't know at the time that I was just self-medicating mental health issues. But that's what I was doing. And I also didn't know at the time that I wasn't actually helping. I was making things worse. I was putting the problems on pause. Nothing was getting solved, nothing was healing. And you know, I try not to ever have any regrets, because the reality is that I needed it. At that time, the pressure was so great, the weight was so heavy, I needed it. I needed to shut my brain off. And I was still functional. So again, nobody really thought anything was wrong. I was still showing up for life and doing all the things and checking all the boxes. I graduated college. You know, I worked really hard, but I was not okay. And slowly that progression got to the point where, to me, it was obvious, but at that point, there was nothing I could do. You know, other speakers have to, you know, brought up the idea of dependence, and that's where I was. I was to the point where, you know, I needed that release. I needed that anxiety, you know, switch flipping. And I did things that I wasn't proud of, you know. And for me, what was really interesting was where my recovery journey started was not for my problems. It was to deal with the problems that my mother was experiencing. I grew up in a house where addiction, mental illness, all kinds of things were present. And I knew that what I had experienced from her journey and the ripple effect that it had on our family, I needed help. And being in that situation, learning about tools, getting to see unconditional love and the power of a network in mutual aid programs was such an important foundation for me. And more importantly, as they were just sharing about Maranon, encouraging the family members to go to the actual, you know, for me, it was alcohol related problem, like, you know, program, and going to the AA meetings to hear about, you know, perspective of my alcoholic relative. That was where I was nodding my head. I realized I'm listening to these people share about the things that it did to them, the ways they felt, the things that, you know, happened. And I was nodding my head going, yeah, I identify with that. And that's when I realized, like, marijuana is a problem for me. And I wasn't ready to do anything about it yet, but that was an important foundation. And eventually when I needed it, I knew where to go back. And so mutual aid for me, 12-step program was where I wound up. I didn't even know things like Maranon and things like that were even available. I don't think that they were at this time in my area. But as Chrissy mentioned, 2016 is when, you know, I started my recovery, you know, my real recovery journey. And it's been amazing. It's not linear. It's not a smooth, even path. There have been ups, there have been downs, there have been times where I've been stronger and healthier than others because life happens, right? But all in all, what's important, you know, from my journey is that I got the chance to work at a place like CAPE, as Chrissy mentioned, that's where I'm currently working. And they taught me about prevention. I didn't also know about prevention growing up. And I wasn't the kid that was an obvious person in need of intervention. So learning about these types of programs that are going on in schools across the country, in communities, educating people, giving kids tools to cope, tools for wellness. That is something that I'm super passionate about. It's something that I think is super important, because if I just have a feeling that if there were more tools like that available, and if there was less stereotyping of which kids need help and which kids don't, maybe a more holistic evaluation of what was going on mentally and, you know, in the kids in my, you know, in my community, I maybe would have gotten flagged and I could have gotten help faster, but it's all good. It's part of the journey, and it's part of what I'm able to now pass forward and help other people sharing my story. But a lot of the things that were mentioned, it really resonated. the stuff about, oh, it's not a problem, especially because there was no marijuana specific programs. I basically just kind of like bluffed at certain times, because if I had told the people I was with what I thought was my real problem, some of them would have laughed me out the door. But it's not about the substance for me. Substance use disorder is about the effect. It's about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. I was trying to dissociate. I was trying to disconnect from all of my bad feelings and all of the negative things swirling inside of me. And you can fill in that blank with whatever you like. Food, people, it can be anything. So I'm very grateful that I have these tools now. And I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to do things like this and share my story. And I'm just grateful to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Alara,
Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
I get to go. Alara, thanks for sharing. I resonated with so much that you said. And Chrissy, thank you for running PAN and putting this on. You do a fantastic job and are essential to our operations at SAM, which is an organization that I'm very grateful to be working for. So I'm Jordan. I have almost 5 years of sobriety. I got sober on December 9th, 2018. Thank you. And my story is actually really similar to Alara's. I too was not a bad kid, quote unquote. I had good grades. I was doing well. I had a lot of friends and had a relatively happy childhood and a good home. I have a mom who got sober when she was 19. My grandfather got sober in the last 6 years of his life. My great grandma never got sober, and I got sober 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. So I hope that kind of the trend in my family is going in the right direction, with people recognizing their problems and getting help at a younger age. Alara, what you said about marijuana and people laughing you out the door probably resonated with me, even more than all the other things that you said. When I was younger, I didn't think that marijuana was a problem. I said, it's just a plant. Now I tell people heroin's also a plant, the poppy plant. It's not addictive. It's harmless. Those were things that I heard and talking points that I recited, maybe foreshadowing me becoming basically a lobbyist today. I was basically lobbying for marijuana and its harmlessness when I was using. And for me, my use started from a place of trust and comfort, right? The person who introduced me to marijuana was my best friend. And he was the person who introduced me to juuling and vaping. And that's what I did before marijuana. And naturally, he got into that as well. And, I wasn't smoking joints a lot. I wasn't using bongs a lot. I wasn't using bowls a lot. The stuff that I was using is really the high potency THC vapes that we see now being spread across this country through marijuana commercialization. That was really my problem, the 90 to 99% THC products. I had no education about this. I remember learning about alcohol. I remember learning about drugs or harder drugs, but I don't really remember anyone telling me the facts that I know now about marijuana. My mom, even someone who's in recovery, didn't know about marijuana and the harms that today's marijuana cause. She just remembered smoking marijuana when she was in college in the 80s, which was obviously a totally different drug. But so I started going down this path and using marijuana. And I distinctly, for me with my use, it comes down to like a few core memories, I guess, is how I chart, I guess, my path. The first one is I remembered sitting in my room when I was in high school and I was stressed out. I was stressed out about some things going on at home, some things going on at school. And it felt like there was just a lot of noise in my life, stress that was coming in a lot of different directions. And I remember clearly sitting there with a dab pen and thinking to myself, wow, when I'm stoned, the noise just seems to decrease, seems to get softer in my life. When I'm moving through my day high, things don't bother me as much. Conversations that make me anxious don't really bother me. And I sort of, I didn't view it as medicine in like a prescription way, right? Like we talk about medicinal marijuana, but that's how I was almost viewing it, as a healing substance for myself. And so in that way, it was initially a positive thing for me, right? That's how I thought about it. But what I didn't realize was, just like most substance use, when it's regarding things like anxiety, it's just a Band-Aid. Right. So, and I talk about this when we talk about medical marijuana for anxiety, that what you're just going to end up doing is you're going to cover the anxiety, and then you're going to wake up one day with even more anxiety and a marijuana use disorder on top of that. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I was in high school and my grades were good. I was doing well, and on the surface, everything seemed fine. And I told myself, really, in my junior year, I started smoking marijuana more. And I told myself that, okay, I'm going to smoke a lot this summer, but when I get back for my senior year and my senior fall, when the grades mattered most for applying to colleges, that's when I'm going to stop. I'm not going to use it. So I start off my senior year, and I started a week not using it, whatever. Then I said, well, okay, it's not a big deal using on weekends. Like, if I smoke on the weekend, who cares? I don't have classes. Okay, so that continued for a week. Then I said, I have half classes on Wednesday. So, what's really the big deal about smoking after class on Wednesday? Because it's not interfering with my classes. I think everyone sees where the story is going. All of a sudden, I'm stoned in all of my classes, and I don't really care about anything. And I'm walking, around the campus of my school when I didn't have marijuana, going up to the people who I knew had it, and begging them to basically rent me, their dab pen for $25, $30 a night, and just holding on to it, as long as I could, and avoiding them, and taking it for a few extra days, just so I wouldn't have to pay extra for more. That's the point that I got with desperation of trying to get it. I remember one night I couldn't get marijuana, and I stayed up all night, and I felt like I had ants crawling all over my skin. It was it was a foreign experience. Other than, honestly, it almost felt like a nicotine withdrawal. If anyone has been through that. And I waited up all night, and my dealer said that he had been stopped by a police officer and got scared and went home. So I didn't get it, and I could barely sleep. This all kind of spiraled out of control for me. I started hanging out with a bunch of different people, right? My dealer who told me facts about marijuana, like if you smoke the same amount of marijuana as you smoke tobacco, it cancels the effect on your lungs, and you're totally healthy, right? That's the kind of drug education that I was getting. My best friends at the time who didn't use any substances, didn't drink alcohol, I stopped hanging out with them. I started hanging out with a different crowd of people. The other kind of core memory here is those friends, right? I was so lucky to have a community of people behind me who cared about me and who loved me. Those friends held an intervention for me. And they basically made me hand over my marijuana and all of my drug paraphernalia. I found a way to keep doing it anyway. And that's when, my best friend called me and told me, it's time to start talking about quitting. It's not time to start talking about slowing down anymore. We're past that point. And, I didn't listen. And then my girlfriend at the time looked at me and gave me an ultimatum because I wasn't remembering anything she was telling me. I was trying to listen and, be a good boyfriend, but my short-term memory was so shot that I wasn't remembering anything she was telling me. And I kept asking the same questions over and over again. And she basically gave me an ultimatum and told me, it's either me or this. And kind of those three events, the intervention, my friend calling me, and that combined with, the strongest memory of all, which is one night in my room. I remember looking at myself in the mirror, and I was always a confident person, and I loved life, and I felt really full and excited for my future. And I looked at myself and didn't recognize the person looking back. I felt like a shell of a human being, and I felt like something had been ripped away from me. And that wasn't a place that I felt comfortable being. And, people talk about their bottom points. And for me, emotionally, that was where I hit my bottom. And I was lucky enough, again, with community, to have a mom who I knew would understand and would do what, she needed to help me. So I decided to stop using, and I went home, and I thought I could do it myself. And I basically, me, almost 18 years old, basically broke down like a baby, curled up, crying on a bed to my mom, begging for help. I was supposed to go abroad, actually, for a semester abroad to Spain, which I was really excited about. And my mom told me that I couldn't go. And my plan was to drink every single day and hit the bars because the age was 18 and I had a problem with marijuana. I didn't have a problem with alcohol, right? That was the place that I was at. And my mom said, yeah, not going to happen. And you just got a problem, man. And she put me in an outpatient rehab program. We went to 12-step meetings every day, did a 90 and 90 at Narcotics Anonymous, and I got the help that I needed. And I went through all of college sober. The working at SAM has been a blessing for me. It's given me the ability to do work in policy that is really crucial. And my work really comes from, what I talked about with community. And that's why I bring it up so much. I was lucky enough to have a community behind me. I was lucky enough to have friends and family who loved me and cared about me and wanted me to get help. There are other people out there who don't have that, who aren't as lucky to be born into a life with that. And so I feel like the work that I do, the work for policy, the work that Bart does with Maranon, the work that Aubrey does with Every Brain Matters, the work that everyone here does is so important because it's a piece of that kind of puzzle that we all need to provide each other support. So I feel like my way of giving back is by engaging in policy to create almost a safety net with policy to make sure that we're enacting good things that help people and not bad ones that are just going to, make people sink deeper and deeper into addiction. And that's what my way of giving back is. And I know everyone on this Zoom right now has their own, and it's really amazing that everyone's here and providing that community. So I just want to thank everyone here for doing the work that they all do. And I'm so grateful to be working at this amazing organization where every day I get to work on projects and things that I'm so passionate about through my own lived experience. And the final thing I'll say is that, outspokenness about this is really the most important piece, right? Like, it's amazing that Alara's on here talking about her story and that everyone is here talking about their personal experience. I'm not trying to make myself out to be this like great savior person. That's not how I want to frame it. But, I felt confident speaking out about my story, even in high school. And there was a girl who on Facebook, she posted, in an anonymous, basically Facebook page for my high school where you could post anonymous comments, that she was struggling with drug use and she didn't know who to go to and she didn't have any resources. And I had to make a decision early in my recovery. Do I comment using my public account, my story, and reach out to this person and expose myself and my own story? Or do I just hide it? And I really didn't want to do that. But I felt like I had a responsibility as someone who was in recovery to reach out to someone and let them know that I was there, even if it exposed my story to people who didn't know it at my school. And I did. And we went to NA meetings together, and we went with another person. And another person just texted me a few months ago saying that they had a few years in recovery now. And that's the benefit about speaking out about this, because many people don't, right? People can reach out to you, even if it's uncomfortable using your platform. And so that's really, really an important and crucial piece. So thanks for everyone listening to me talk today, and keep doing the amazing work that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, you two, and thank you, everyone. Obviously, we're running a little over, and so we want to have a few minutes for questions. And I do want to say something that, again, it's been mentioned before that this is a supportive community, and there are some new members on here with some important questions. And so I definitely want to have them speak, but, I want to mention again that there is hope, and Jordan and Alara are beautiful examples of that hope. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bronwyn so she can run through some of these questions. And thank you all for remaining on this special presentation. Thank you.
And I just wanted to start off with Alara and Jordan, that Jennifer says that you sound exactly like her daughter, and is very grateful for you sharing your story in this meeting. Seems like every time you open your mouths, you touch somebody, right? When you give your story and you're helping someone. So thank you for that. Really appreciate your openness. Everybody, I put quite a few links in the chat to Every Brain Matters, Recovering the Pines, to also Maranon and Marijuana Anonymous, which is for the users. So they're all meeting finders for information. If you need help, need to find more information, or if you have someone in your life or eventually will need this information. So hold on to it, and we'll be sending it out with the recording next week as well. So to start, Ken Winters had to hop off really quickly, but I wanted to ask his questions. His first one is for Doug, and he asks you, when talking with middle school students, what surprises you the most? And also, what surprises you the most with high school students?
Yeah, so I recently spoke at a middle school out here about 2-3 weeks ago, and very insightful questions that they put out there. I was surprised at the maturity that I was seeing from some of them. And also, unfortunately, on the negative side, to hear how many are already dabbling or experimenting with substances out there. You know, some of it starts usually in tobacco or vaping and things of that nature, then typically leads to marijuana and alcohol, and then, you know, beyond that. So just be aware, at a very early age, kids are maturing very quickly as far as experimentation is concerned. At the high school level, I have seen, because I've spoken at a number of high schools, typically in the freshman and sophomore years, they're kind of disengaged, almost wanting to show how grown up they are, and I don't need to worry about it, and it's not that big of a deal. I see more awareness at the senior level, and again, very appropriate questions, because we're seeing them go down one of two paths. Either, hey, I'm not going to college beyond high school, and I'm going to step out and start living life, and yet, you know, I've got a lot of responsibilities coming my way. And then those that do go the college route, you're going to go into a hyper-stimulated scenario where you have all kinds of things, and you've kind of moved out under that parent umbrella. And so I've just seen a lot of insightful questions there. We've seen some decrease in usage in our area because a lot of it is being done with MatForce, one of the organizations that I participate in. I'm really getting the information out there. And one of the things, really quickly, you know, what impressed me about Jordan and Alara's story, first, thank you for getting that information out there, because many people at your age aren't ready to make that change as of yet. It seems like it can isolate you, which what we know is I'm probably about 30 years your senior, and so many things about your story is like, yep, that was me back then too, right? Like, I was that really good kid. I came from a really good family. I didn't have substance use and abuse. I was the golden boy in my company. I went from a box boy to a VP position in a company that was about 250 employees doing 300 million in sales, and yet they didn't know who they had on that trajectory. And so we can hide out right in front of you until you do get to that point where I too was curled up in my room crying like a baby, just begging this to somehow stop. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to get well.
The next question we have is from Phil. Phil Drum's here today. And just so you know, Phil's done a lot of really great work with Corrine, who I think is also here in the marijuana impaired driving lane, I guess, no pun intended. But they've done a lot of really good work on working on policies and for awareness on marijuana impaired driving. And his question is, are you aware of any scientific studies that have proven the appropriate strain for specific indications? Did they also assure the percentage of THC/CBD of the products used was consistent? And that's for Doug again.
You know, it's a really interesting market out there. I wouldn't say that I've necessarily seen the studies. What I would say is that how many times I've heard individuals say, hey, I'm going to go get it from a dispensary, and so I can trust what I'm getting. And what I've seen is, no, you can't. Even to the extent I've had some people get things from dispensaries that they later found out had traces of fentanyl in it. And they thought that that would be screened out. And so I would just say I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith. I wouldn't put a whole lot of trust. Their businesses too. Some are backdooring products from other sources that are not reliable. And so you're just taking a gamble. And again, just like what I mentioned relative to the psych meds and what I mentioned relative to the pain meds, our bodies don't process these things in the same way. So maybe that strain of that THC and CBD concentration seems to be working for another individual. It doesn't mean it's going to be working for you.
Yes. Okay, and another question from Ken. He asked, can you comment, Doug, on why teen treatment programs fail? Same factors as you discussed.
Yeah, there's a couple of factors. Typically, one of the things is always watching, is the individual resistant to the care that you're trying to provide them? You can't help somebody get well if they don't want to get well. And so, sometimes at that age, there's just resistance, like, come on, I'm young. It's not that big of a deal. Or having that maturity to see, hey, maybe my body doesn't process this in the same way that it processes for my friends. So if they seem to be okay, why can't I be okay with this? And so sometimes it's just that resistance at a very early age. Some of it is also not the education. And I love what Aubrey put up there as far as, some of the ways to engage your loved ones on this. And I'm a huge believer too. And yes, you've got to take care of you first to be able to provide that healthy support to your loved ones. And how do I engage them, or how do I not engage them in healthy ways? So I'm not enabling them and things of that nature. And so often I'll see either the teen is really not committed to getting well, and or the parents don't know how to best support them through the process.
And it's that question is a really good question. And the answer is there's no yes or no, black and white. I think about Jordan, who is ready at 18, but my family member at 19, no way, was just not ready.
Well, and just
that.
quickly relative to that, so I was a little bit older. I was 26, but I was still relatively young when I got sober. I went to an okay program, and the difference was I was immensely desperate from day one of going into my program. Like, the program didn't have to convince me things were bad. I'll often see clients come in. We might take a couple of months just to get them to the point that they're convinced, hey, maybe I really do need some help. Right. And so that's a huge factor.
So I think this question can really be to any of our webinar guests today, our speakers. Phil asked, if you had a magic wand in the president's ear, what would you tell him to do right now with marijuana in the US? So if anyone wants to just go ahead and any of you want to take that one on, go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Yeah, I can take it on. Especially doing work in policy, the federal government totally ignores the federal marijuana laws. And I'm not saying that we need to crack down on people who are possessing small amounts of marijuana, and Sam advocates for treatment over incarceration and stuff like that when it comes to especially things like possession. But when it comes to really cracking down on distribution charges and making sure that enforcement is clear there, and cracking down on dispensaries too, I don't see a realistic path now for people to just go around shutting down dispensaries. But a certainly good first step would be getting all this crazy marketing and crazy products that they're selling out there to under control. They're selling things, I think there are some speakers who talked about that, and the absolute insane stuff that's clearly targeted to kids. And the other thing I would just say is making sure that there's more awareness about the tobacco and alcohol influence in this industry. I'm sure many of you know they're heavily invested in it. What many people don't know is 2 years ago, the biggest tobacco and biggest alcohol companies in the world funded a lobbying group that's working in DC and doing events all the time to push for federal legalization, and they've hired a former Senate Majority Leader, Tom Daschle, and a former chairman of the most powerful committee in the House of Representatives, Greg Walden, to be their top 2 lobbyists. And they're actually presenting at the Congressional Black Caucus, a national event today on marijuana and social justice, even though, you know, they're 2 guys who look like me, who were former members of Congress, who are doing all the lobbying on this. So those are a few things that I would do if I had that opportunity.
If I could add to the conversation, if I was in the president's ear, I would ask for, and I just testified at the National Science and Committee. One is have a national education campaign with public service announcements. I don't understand why COVID got all the education, but this issue is not. I remember going through the AIDS epidemic, and there was a lot of education everywhere about that. That does not exist in our country, and that is not fair, because these high concentration marijuana products are not proven safe for the adult brain either. And I witnessed that with my husband. 2, I would shut down the medical marijuana industry. They are getting away with medical malpractice by impersonating medical professionals. 3, I would put a potency cap on the recreational marijuana states that have legalized that. And then 3, I would pull all the hemp THC products from the shelves. The FDA keeps sending warning letters that these products are harming people, and Bluebell ice cream gets pulled from the shelf here in Texas. Why are these products on the shelves? I know 3 families that have lost their children from psychotic breaks from hemp THC products and have died by suicide. That alone, just one of those children, would support these products being pulled from the shelf. So get rid of the deceptive, predatory practices for the marijuana industry. Get lawsuits, educational campaigns. These vapes that are on the scene, if they didn't have sugary flavors in them, the kids would spit them out. They taste like chemicals drenched with weed. So just to add to the conversation, sorry, you can tell I'm passionate too and a little ticked off about this issue, but we really need to pass policy that doesn't harm people. We need to help. So, you know, we need to focus on drug prevention and recovery policies only. No more drug promotional policies like legalizing more drugs. That's where I'm at with this issue. So thanks for letting me share.
Good points. Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you, Jordan. Both very good.
And thank you for sharing that. No, there's it's so good to hear the passion in your voices, and that you know exactly what you would say, because the problems are so evident and so clear. I'm going to go ahead. This question is, can you provide suggestions for best treatment centers in the U.S. for marijuana use disorder and mental illness? We are going to be sending out a reference sheet, resources. There's the word resources sheet. And we'll have Doug and some of the others also maybe contribute some of their ones that they think as well that they might want to add. And I think Doug went over pretty well. You'll get the slides and you'll get a handout from Doug as well, what to really look for in a good marijuana use disorder treatment plan. So if it's okay, I think we'll send that out to you, if that's okay. And if you go ahead and type it back in, type the question back in at the end, if you would like to, like us to address it a little bit further tonight. Susan asked, many recovery, Doug, like yours, are faith-based. Do you think an agnostic approach can work, or is being a believer a necessary piece of recovery programs?
Yeah, no, we are a faith-based program. We actually have another entity that's called Spartan Recovery, and that is not a faith-based program, but it still gets into certain spiritual aspects, because the 12-step program has a spiritual component to it. And when I talk about spirituality, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking more about, hey, can I be present in the moment? Can I accept things for the way that they are and engage something greater than myself? So there's other aspects to what could be the spiritual component without necessarily attaching it to a faith or a religion. Do I believe somebody that's agnostic can get sober? Absolutely. I've seen it happen many times. And even though Recovery in the Pines is a faith-based program, not everybody that comes here is somebody who's a believing or professing Christian, and they don't need to be to go through that. So I also kind of liken it to I've done extensive studies for a period of time on Eastern philosophies, Buddhism, I Ching, the Tao, things of that nature. And although I found things very beneficial from those, I don't consider myself a Buddhist. So can somebody who's agnostic get sober? Absolutely. There are studies that connecting to, either a community of faith and or a 12-step based community, which has spiritual aspects, having that sense of community aids in long-term sobriety.
Thank you. Jennifer asks, any suggestions as to how to help my daughter understand THC psychosis that she experienced is a real thing. She insists the THC was helping her sleep. She is not convinced she has a problem even after experiencing CIP. I think
Bronwyn, before an answer is put out to that, I also want to say, because it is getting late, but there's another question related from another mom in our network, Teresa, who asks similarly, like, when you've gone through a lot of stuff and tried forced recovery and things like that, how long do you remain a witness to this, and until when? Like, what can you possibly do? So I think maybe we'll close with that. And again, any questions we missed, we will send responses to. We will reach out to the people who you want that question answered by, and we'll get you those answers. But I'd like to close with possibly a response to these questions from these moms on this meeting tonight, who are asking, who are struggling with their young adult children and who need some help. So if we could maybe address that. I know we don't have the end all with all solution, but if we could just address those two questions, and then we'll wrap up for tonight.
Can I sneak in on that one?
I'd love you to.
So just to share my personal experience, growing up with my mother, denial was strong for her. And, kind of to address what Jennifer was saying, unfortunately, denial is necessary. Like when you're in the throes, for me, it was necessary for me to deny that I had an issue because I was not ready to fix it. I felt like I needed it. I felt like I wasn't ready. And so growing up with my mother and wanting her to get better and begging for her to get better and guilting her and shaming her, and not intentionally doing so, but using whatever tools I could grasp to try to get her to change because I just wanted her to be okay. None of it worked. None of that worked. The only thing that I was able to do that finally made a difference was when I got support. And honestly, Aubrey went through it beautifully. You have to put your oxygen mask on first. That's what I experienced. And you have to fortify yourself. I was just talking to someone about this the other night. The only thing is to fortify yourself, because that person has to struggle sometimes. It's how it is. And sometimes they have to experience some sort of bottom, some sort of strong pain that motivates that change. And so the best thing that I was able to do was to be ready, because when that person is ready, they're going to need help. They're going to need support, and they're going to need love. And so by taking care of myself, getting myself tools, it made me available to be that person when that individual was ready. And it was the same for me. My father, thank God, my dad and I went into Al-Anon together to address the issues with my mother and the impact. And for us, that network he built, when I spiraled out, that network he built saved me too, because they were there for him every night. He wasn't clamping down on me like he used to do with my sister. He was letting me unravel. And that is a horrible thing to have to do as a parent. But unfortunately, that's what I needed. I needed to feel it. I needed to go through it. And then him having the support he needed allowed me to just be and to live and to be there for me when I was ready to be like, I'm not okay. And I want to be okay. So
Thank you, Alara.
Is there any way I could comment too? I know we're over time, so I won't comment unless you say yes.
Clearly, we need to have a second webinar on this. So,
I agree with everything Laura said, and I would say that people don't change because they want to, they change because they have to. So getting healthy boundaries in your home is a key, working with a professional and coming up with a plan and having that compassion and not shaming and blaming and projecting our fears on our loved ones is key. And we only learn those skills in the rooms of recovery by connecting with other families that have walked this journey. You know, I'm further down the road in my recovery process as a family member, but I'm just as close to the ditch as you've seen. I shared a little bit about it. So we tend to think that just going to treatment, that episode of care is going to fix our kids, but really it's just a smidgen of the recovery process. And that's why it's really, really important that family members understand what their role is, what they can control, what they can't control, and learn how to connect with their kiddos in a very, very positive way outside of the drug use, especially, and allow the natural consequences to come and not put up with any destructive behavior. But not in a mean way, in a clear, kind way. So that's so much easier said than done. And so, you know, I'm happy to continue the conversation at a later time too. So that's my specialty. That's what I teach families. So thanks for having this webinar.
If I could just add really quickly. So at that trauma conference, one of the sessions I did was the difference between where do we cross the line from empathy to enabling. And so just really quickly on that, I'm a huge believer in approaching people with empathy and compassion. And yet I'm going to ask something of them, which is take ownership for your life and get into healthy action to the best of your ability. And if they choose to do that, I can continue to engage you with empathy and compassion. If you don't do that, and I don't change something, it's very easy for that empathy to become enabling, and or it's easy for it to change into anger, resentment, fear, and all these other things. And so them not taking ownership, which is not to say I'm responsible if there's a lot of trauma. I'm responsible for all the trauma that's happened to me. I'm just now responsible for the choices I'm making in my life today. And so if they aren't willing to take ownership for their life, they stay a victim. Victims don't get well. And if they aren't willing to get into healthy action to the best of their ability, which is different for each person, I have to detach with love. And so there's a longer conversation on that, which we could get into on another session, but I just wanted to add that.
and also, I just wanted to point out too, that for those of you that get our newsletter, Daryl Rogers is a
Yes.
certified family coach, and our feature article is by him, and he has some good information as well. So there's lots of different things there. They all are very similar. And I do believe that with our resources we're sending out, we will have most of our guests' contact information.
Yep.
If they okay it, and you can feel free to reach out to them as well, because I know, you know, being a family in recovery ourselves, that it's very important to talk to other people. So we'll try to get you PAN as a community as well as an advocacy and education group.
So really quickly, I'm sorry on that. You have my cell number, you have my email address. Anybody that's listening, I would rather have you reach out than feel like I don't want to burden you. Please reach out.
And that will be on Doug's sheet as well, that he put together for us to send out.
So again, thank you, everybody, all of our speakers. I know it's late and I know we all get up early. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I appreciate everything that everyone is doing. For all the parents and new families and members of PAN that are on this webinar, thank you for being here. And I hope this was valuable information for you. And we look forward to working with you and advocating for you. So thank you again. Have a great night and a good weekend. And keep an eye on what's going on with PAN. Thank you.